How many remember Southpole Clothing? Baggy jeans, loud, bold graphics, typical late 90s rap fashion. And if you were coming up in the late 90s and early 2000s, chances are you do remember. In the days just prior to the official introduction of streetwear, logo-heavy rap fashion ruled the pack, and brands like Southpole and later Lot 29 offered the look and feel, but at much cheaper prices than all of the leading brands of the day. I didn't even know that the same people that launched Southpole also launched Lot 29. I actually found it out while doing research for this video. But the point is, between the two brands, they had a nice little foothold in the game at that point in time. So how did it all go wrong for them? How did a brand like Southpole and their sister label Lot 29 go from a respectable lower price alternative to virtual obscurity? Well, let's find out. I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com, and this is the rise and fall of Southpole Clothing, from baggy jeans to busted dreams. But before we get started, please take a second to stop and hit that like button for me. Liking and sharing these videos, as I always say, is the best way to help us continue to grow. We've done a lot of growth over the past couple of weeks, and I can't thank you guys enough for helping us get there, and I just ask that you continue to look out for us. But now that we got all the customaries out of the way, let's jump right into the story. It all starts with two brothers from South Korea, David and Kenny Kim. Their family immigrated to the US in 1977 along with their three siblings. Once they got to the States, the two brothers instantly fell in love with hip-hop culture, which was all over New York at the time, desperately searching for a way to get a piece of the pie. And by 1981, David had managed to save up $10,000 for his big idea. He also went on to secure another $5,000 line of credit and used it to open the retail clothing store in Brownsville, Brooklyn. He hired his younger brother Kenny to work for him in the store, and they were doing pretty good initially. So good that their landlord decided to raise the rent on them. So in 1989, they decided that it was time to relocate, and they moved their store to Jamaica, Queens. Once they had moved, they noticed the good problem that they kept running into. They couldn't keep the baggy stuff in stock. Every time they got more in, it almost instantly sold out. Again, like I said, a good problem to have, right? So to mitigate this, Dave came up with another idea: to start a wholesale company that would import clothes from Pakistan. They named this new company Wicked Fashions. In 1991, now that they had a healthy supply of white label clothing, David thought that it would be a good idea to start their own official label. He decided to call it Southpole in honor of a team of Korean explorers who had recently become the first from that country to reach the actual South Pole. By the mid-90s, Southpole had caught fire. The brand's signature baggy jeans and graphic tees and tracksuits were booming in the culture at the time. And unlike many of the higher-end brands, Southpole offered the same look at accessible prices, which made it more attainable to inner city and working class kids. I remember growing up in the hood, my parents wasn't always going to give me money for the most expensive stuff, so I spent a lot of time smurfing stores like Burlington, Ross, and City Trends. You could always find brands like Southpole there, and depending on what you picked out, you could ensemble something pretty nice. I mean, you definitely wouldn't get roasted for it. The Kim's strategy was simple, yet effective. Deliver the look and the feel of premium streetwear, but without the premium price tag. This approach made Southpole a staple in stores like JCPenney's, Sears, and Foot Locker, reaching a nationwide audience. Now, this strategy has gone terribly wrong for many of the brands in the past, but the difference is those brands started out at a higher end and resigned themselves to those stores. Southpole, on the other hand, well, they started out this way. So for them, it only helped with the visibility, which in turn led to increased sales. But as a wise man once said, more money, more problems. And in 1996, dissension reared its ugly head in the land of Southpole. The brothers had been having disagreements for quite some time, but by '96, things had reached a head. Kenny decided to leave and start his own brand, which he named Against All Odds, and launched as a chain of mall-based stores selling similar style clothing. However, in 1998, David had another great idea. Noticing the success of Iceberg History, a brand that we covered a few weeks back, he figured that if they could do it, then he could too. Lot 29 was launched as a response. Iceberg had been making millions off selling $300 to $400 sweaters with Disney characters on them. Kids like me were the prime target for Lot 29. I wanted Iceberg, but due to budget constraints, I wound up owning a lot more Lot 29. David basically took the same blueprint from Southpole and applied it here. Same baggy late 90s hip hop looks, but incorporating characters like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Taz. In hindsight, it was a genius idea considering clothing like this was so popular at that time. By aligning their designs with a booming hip hop culture, Southpole, and by extension Lot 29, had managed to do something not many others could. They devised a way to make affordable clothes cool. The brand's popularity soared, and by the early 2000s, it was generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. David had managed to build the legitimacy of both brands. Southpole / Lot 29's rise was fueled by its ability to capture the essence of what was going on in fashion in the early 2000s. They were all over magazine ads and getting cameos in TV shows and music videos. They even did things like add fur to hoodies and coats to simulate a real luxury feel. But the glory days were rapidly coming to an end. As they say, thanks to gravity, whatever goes up must inevitably come crashing back down at some point. And this too reigned true for Southpole and all its affiliated brands. The introduction of the early days of streetwear brands were like barbarians at the gates of ancient Rome. They broke in and laid waste to the previous standards. Trends suddenly changed. Baggy clothes were out, and the pendulum has swung all the way back to a more fitted look. Brands like Rocawear, Sean John, and all of the other brands that Southpole had been, let's be honest, copying, had fallen out of favor, carrying Southpole down the drain with them. Further adding to Southpole's challenges was the decline in brick and mortar retail. The brand had relied heavily on department stores and malls to reach out to its customers. But as these stores began to close and lose foot traffic in the early 2010s, Southpole's presence further dwindled. The final nail in Southpole's coffin, in my opinion, had to be fast fashion. Suddenly, stores like H&M and Forever 21 were not only dominating the brick and mortar sector, but capitalizing on the digital market as well. And Southpole simply couldn't keep up. Unlike newer brands that embraced e-commerce and social media marketing, Southpole struggled to adapt to the digital age. Plus, its designs, though once trendy, had begun to feel dated to new generations of consumers. Today, Southpole still exists, although it's a shadow of its former self. Lot 29, not so much. I guess that high-priced Warner Brothers licensing agreement was no longer worth the hassle, so they just kind of shelved or ditched that one, sadly. But Southpole, on the other hand, pivoted to offer more contemporary styles while occasionally leaning into its more retro appeal. You can still find their products online and in some stores, but they're nowhere near where they used to be. Interestingly enough, the brand's vintage pieces have found a second life among nostalgic fashion enthusiasts. On resale platforms, classic Southpole designs from the 90s and 2000s are being rediscovered by a new generation. But the new stuff? Not really. Southpole's story is yet another testament to the ever-changing nature of fashion. It rose to the top by understanding the culture and delivering what the people wanted, at the prices that they wanted. But it struggled to keep pace with the evolving trends in the digital revolution. Although Southpole may no longer be what it once was, it clearly laid the groundwork for trendy, affordable fashion that many other companies have taken advantage of to this day. And for that reason alone, they'll always have a place in the hearts and minds of a generation. But what do you think? Were you a fan of Southpole or Lot 29 back in the day? Hit us up in the comment section and let us know. And if you enjoyed what you saw here, we hope that you smash that like button for us. Liking these and sharing these videos, liking and sharing, it's important to do both. But liking and sharing these videos is the best way to help smaller channels like ours continue the growth that we've been doing, so much so over the past month or so. And if you want to be updated whenever we drop a new video like this, then don't forget to hit the subscribe button and then the notification bell. That way you can be dinged when each new episode drops. With all that being said, I'm Nate the Great from TakeFlight214.com signing out. Until next time, peace.